I've made over $30,000 buying and selling cars as a side hustle, and in this video I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. We'll be starting right back at my very first car flip all the way through to present day, where I'll give you guys a sneak peek on the most ambitious car flip I have ever attempted. The very first car in my car flipping challenge came as a 2006 Mazda 3 MPS I was able to pick up at my local auctions for $6,538. It needed a new battery, which cost $200. I gave it a full service, which cost $192. The headlight washer caps were faded, so I painted those at a cost of $20, and the front brake pads were a little worn, so I replaced those for $60. Meaning that all up, I had spent $7,604 on my very first car flip. And luckily for me, I was actually able to sell that weekend for $9,000, giving me my first profit, which was $1,396. Next up on the car flipping challenge was a 2010 Suzuki Swift that I was able to pick up from the same auctions again for $4,075. Now this car was pretty mint and only required a valve cover seal being replaced, as there was a little bit of an oil leak, which cost $68, meaning in total with registration I had spent $4,702 on my Suzuki Swift. After listing it for sale, I managed to get $7,300, giving me a profit of $2,598 for my second flip. Next up in my car flipping challenge, I bought a 2005 Subaru Impreza WRX on Facebook Marketplace for $9,500. And I had a little bit of fun with this one with some modifications. I bought an STI rear spoiler for $600. I then tinted the windows for $300, put on a new shift knob for $122, and obviously being a blue Subaru WRX, I painted the wheels gold for $52. It needed a new coil pack, which cost me $20. The headlights needed restoring, which cost $60. The O2 sensor unfortunately went out and was quite costly at $304 to replace. And with all the registration and insurance, I had spent $11,536 on my Subaru Impreza WRX. But luckily for me, I was able to sell the stock rear spoiler that came with the vehicle for $200, meaning all in I had spent $11,336 on my WRX. After listing it back up for sale on Facebook Marketplace, I managed to sell it for $12,800, meaning I had made a profit of $1,464 on my Subaru WRX. Heading straight back to the auctions, I picked up my fourth car flip, which was a 2007 Lexus GS300 for $10,243. The windshield had a crack in it, which meant I had to replace it at a cost of $170. The touchscreen no longer recognized my touch anymore, which cost $20 to fix. And the alternator decided to go bad during my ownership, which cost $350. Meaning all in, I had spent $12,035 on my Lexus GS300. And unfortunately, the bad news didn't stop there. The car ended up sitting with me for over 3 months as no one wanted this Lexus, but I did end up selling it for $11,000, giving us the first loss in the challenge, which was $1,035.
Oh, what a loser!
After the loss of the Lexus GS300, I headed straight back to the auctions and wanted to buy something that I knew had worked for me before. So I picked up a 2006 Mazda 6 MPS for $8,000. All that was required with this one was a new battery, which cost me $157, meaning with registration and insurance all up, I had spent $8,788. Unfortunately, like the Lexus, this one took a little bit to sell, but I did end up being able to sell it for $9,500, meaning that I made a profit of $712. Coming in at number 6, I picked up a 2008 Audi A5 from my local auctions for $9,834. It needed a new tire, which cost $205. I replaced the rear window tint as it was bubbling for $375, meaning with registration I had spent a total of $11,468 on my Audi A5. After a short period of my Audi being listed, I ended up selling it for $13,000, giving me a profit of $1,532. Next up on my car flipping challenge, coming in at flip number 7, I bought a Nissan 350Z for $9,300 from Facebook Marketplace. And after getting it home, I needed to replace the left-hand bank valve cover gasket, which cost $30. Gave the Z a full service, which cost $90, as well as replacing the bonnet or hood in America for $400, meaning in total I had spent $10,750 on my 350Z. There was some good news though. I did have some extra parts that came with the vehicle that I was able to sell for $150, meaning in total I was into this 350Z for $10,600. And after listing it up back on Facebook Marketplace, I was able to sell it relatively quickly for $15,000, meaning I had made $4,399 in profit, which is by far the biggest to date in the challenge. After the success of the 350Z and all the other enthusiast and sporty vehicles I had bought so far, I went back to the auctions with the same goal in mind, and I ended up buying a 2011 Volkswagen Golf GTI for $11,556. After getting it home, I replaced the rear window tint, which was starting to bubble just like the Audi, which cost me $130, as well as giving it a quick service for $57, meaning in total I was into my Golf for $12,514. After listing it for a short time, I was able to sell it for $15,000, netting me a profit of $2,486 for this Golf GTI. After many comments on our YouTube videos asking us to buy a SS Commodore, we managed to pick one up for our 9th flip for $13,200 from Facebook Marketplace. I needed to replace the shift boot, which cost $69, gave the VE SS Commodore a full service, which cost $121. I even hired out a wet vacuum because the interior had a bunch of stains and was absolutely disgusting, which cost me $60. I restored the headlights for $71. The fuel alone for a naturally aspirated V8 cost a lot at $101, meaning in total I had spent $14,569, including registration and insurance. And this one was a little bit tough to sell. I had a few people interested and came and test drove the car, but unfortunately didn't end up buying it. So I ended up putting it through the auctions to see what would happen. And to my amazement, it sold for $17,649, giving me a profit of $3,080 on a car sold through the auctions. For flips number 10 and 11, I decided to do something a little bit different and have a flip off with my brother. I bought a 1999 Mazda MX-5 off Facebook Marketplace for $6,400. It needed a new battery, which cost me $125. The wheels needed an alignment, which cost $70, as well as the soft top was in need of repair, which cost me $125, meaning in total, with registration, I had spent $7,641 on my Mazda MX-5. I was lucky enough to be able to sell it quite quickly for $10,000, giving me a profit of $2,538 on my Mazda MX-5. Morgan was able to also buy a 1999 Mazda MX-5 for $7,500. His car also needed a wheel alignment, but also needed a tire, which cost $262, as well as the wheel bearing needing to be replaced, which cost $82, meaning Morgan in total had spent $8,655 on his MX-5. Unfortunately, the bad news doesn't stop there for Morgan. After some time with his MX-5, he ended up selling it for $9,000, giving him a massive profit of $345, crowning me the victor of our flip-off challenge. For flips number 11, I decided to do something a little bit different and have a flip off with my brother. I bought a 1999 Mazda MX-5 off Facebook Marketplace for $6,400. It needed a new battery, which cost $69. The fuel alone for a naturally aspirated V8 cost a lot at $101. Meaning in total I had spent $14,569, Unfortunately for flip number 12, the footage that I have is corrupted, so I'll quickly tell you about my 1996 Nissan Skyline GTS-T I managed to pick up for $15,500 from Facebook Marketplace. With parts and servicing, I had spent a total of $17,970 all up on my R33 Skyline. I then managed to sell it for $19,000, giving me a profit of $1,030. If any of you have been watching the challenge for some time, you'll know I love Porsches. So when a 2011 Porsche Cayenne S e-hybrid came up for sale on Facebook Marketplace, I bought it immediately for $24,500. After getting it home, I gave it a full service, including changing the spark plugs as we're having some misfire problems, which cost me $297. I gave it a new battery because the one we had was on its way out, which cost an eye-watering $639 for this battery. I replaced the radio for $300, as well as sending it to Porsche dealership, my local dealer, to try and diagnose and figure out the problems that we were still having with the car, which cost $803. This thing chewed through fuel like you wouldn't believe and cost $97 in fuel during our ownership, meaning the total we spent on our Porsche Cayenne was $27,939. And unfortunately, we weren't able to register or insure this because we, one, had run out of money, and two, it wasn't in a state that it could be. So we ended up putting it through the auctions as is, and fingers crossed we didn't lose too much money. But unfortunately, we lost money. The Porsche Cayenne ended up selling for $23,660, meaning we had lost $4,279 owning this Porsche Cayenne. After the massive loss I just had on my Porsche Cayenne, I headed straight back to the auctions and just bought something safe and easy. So I ended up picking up a 2019 Suzuki Swift that I was able to pick up for $12,972. Nothing was needed, the car was perfect. So with registration and insurance, I had spent a total of $14,039 on my Suzuki Swift. I was then later able to sell it for $15,000, giving me a profit of $960, which is not a lot of money, but after you've just lost nearly $5,000 on this Porsche and having to do nothing with the car besides register it, it wasn't too bad. Coming in at flip number 15, I bought sight unseen from the auctions, which breaks every rule I have about buying and selling cars, a 2020 Nissan Navara ST for $17,655. And this was an insane buy. I just put a YOLO bid on this Navara because it was cheap and it had about an hour to go, fully expecting me to be outbid in the last 10 or 15 minutes. But it wasn't the case, and I ended up buying it. And the car was actually really good. After buying a tonneau cover, which cost $183, as well as a new bed liner for the Nissan Navara for $50, all up, I had spent $19,145, including registration and insurance, on my Nissan Navara. But the good news keeps on coming. I was able to sell this Nissan Navara for $30,100, meaning yes, I made over $10,000 on this car. I made $10,955, almost $11,000 on this Nissan Navara, that all I did was put a cover over the back of the deck and a new bed liner. Insane amount of profit. Unfortunately, like the Nissan Skyline, my next flip number 16's footage is also corrupted. So I'll quickly tell you about my 2019 Isuzu D-Max I was able to pick up at my local auctions for $32,177. With all parts, registration and insurance, I had spent a total of $34,917 on the Isuzu D-Max. And after listing it for sale and waiting quite some time for a buyer, I managed to sell it for $36,500, giving me a profit of $1,680. Coming in at flip number 17, and the final flip that you guys would have seen briefly on our channel, I bought a 2009 Nissan 370Z off Facebook Marketplace for $16,550. After getting it home, I realized that the clutch was no longer holding fluid or pressure, so we ended up having to replace the clutch release assembly inside the gearbox, which did require the entire gearbox to come out of the car, which cost $231. A new A-pillar trim was needed, which cost $425, as well as a new shift knob at $120, a new clutch line, which cost $127. I ended up respraying the bonnet because it was badly faded, which cost $503, as well as repairing some leather on the dash, which cost $37, and finally giving it a full service, which cost $318, meaning I had spent a total of $19,581 on this 370Z. After having it up for sale and realizing that the 370Z market was definitely on the downward trajectory, I managed to sell it for $20,300, giving me a profit of $719, which wasn't that great, but profit is profit. With the 370Z sold, I now had a budget of $37,424, meaning I had roughly made $30,000 buying and selling cars as a side hustle. Don't worry, this is not the end. I still plan on going on and seeing if I can one day get to that Lamborghini. But in the meantime, I'll leave you with this sneak preview of the next flip I have underway, and it is by far the most ambitious flip I have ever attempted.